So when you talk about the adversity that you had growing up, let's define that a little bit.
So I grew up in a really toxic upbringing. My father is an alcoholic. He's hurting so much inside, and hurt people. And so I looked at it from a different lens, and I looked at him as a little boy being hurt by his parents and being abused. And it was just really hard because...
Where do you see leaders failing the most today?
I think it comes down to emotional intelligence and being able to regulate your emotional state. I find so many people let outside circumstances and validation and what people think about them and what people say about them define their character and who they are. But
welcome to Mick Unplugged, where we ignite potential and fuel purpose. Get ready for raw insights, bold moves, and game-changing conversations. Buckle up. Here's Mick.
Welcome back to another exciting episode of Mick Unplugged. And our guest today is a dynamic professional who has seamlessly blended her expertise in law with a commitment to uplifting women in business. Her journey is a testament to resilience, vision, and the power of pursuing one's passions. Get ready for an engaging conversation with the remarkable, the fearless, the charismatic, one of my closest friends in the world, Miss Samantha Lynn Peters. Samantha, how you doing today, dear?
I'm amazing. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
I am honored to have you on. What's crazy is that we met for the first time, like October of last year at an event in LA, and we've been like besties since then.
I know. It's been amazing being in contact with you. And I find going to these events, you never know who you can meet. You never know what relationship you can cultivate. So it's been awesome.
Yeah, I truly think it's the testament to not just networking, right? I think people go to a lot of events, but really going selflessly with the intent of getting to know the right people, having the right conversations with people, because you never know where that goes. And like I said, I mean, Samantha and I got to know each other in October. And I would say the power of networking, the power of Instagram, because we probably are talking and sending each other inspiration and motivation through Instagram and all that. But how has that been an impact of your life, Samantha? Because I think you truly are the example of, going to networking events purposely, right? Seeking the right people, making the right connections, but then doing what you do really well, which is following through and delivering on those meetings and on those conversations?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's honestly transformed my life. I didn't have any external mentors growing up. I grew up in a really toxic environment. So I got into personal development at a really early age. And I'm sure all of you have heard that you are the 5 people you surround yourself with. So I'm like, I need to get in rooms with people who think bigger than me, people who want to see me succeed, people who, and one of my coaches always tells me this, is like, you want to learn from people who have what you want, but more importantly, who have been where you are. And I find all of these networking events, a lot of people have been through so much adversity. They've been through so many different challenges, but they were able to overcome them. And it's just really inspiring learning from all these people and getting to connect with them. So it's absolutely transformed my life.
Wholeheartedly. And, you talked about, not growing up in the best situation, the best environment, overcoming adversity. And, you and I have talked not specifically about that because we kind of told each other, let's wait for the podcast so that I can actually hear the story for the first time. So I know who you are today, right? Very dynamic person. But let's go back. Let's talk about what's defined and giving you the core values that you have today. So when you talk about the adversity that you had growing up, let's define that a little bit.
Yeah, so I grew up in a really toxic upbringing. My father is an alcoholic. He was heavy into Oxycontin, so that completely destroys your frontal lobe and your decision-making factors. And I find before I felt like I was a victim to my circumstance, but I really realized, and I did so much inner work to realize that he's hurting so much inside, and hurt people. And so I looked at it from a different lens, and I looked at him as a little boy being hurt by his parents and being abused and growing up in that environment. And unfortunately, he projected all of his pain, all of his insecurities on his children. And obviously I got the brunt of it. And it was just really hard because your father is supposed to be the one person that shows up for you, that loves you, that nurtures you, where you can build that safe trust. And I didn't have that. So I grew up putting a lot of guards in front of me and trying to protect my own peace and happiness. And I think the hardest part for me was understanding, like, why doesn't my father love me? And I grew up thinking that, but it's because he doesn't love himself. And so how can you love someone when you don't truly feel at peace with who you are, what you've been, and work through all of that? So it was really hard to go through those things. And I still honestly don't have a good relationship with him, but I feel like it's really made me dig deep to understand the psychology behind the way he is. And now I can show up and pray for him and give him compassion and love, but know that I don't have to live that way. I don't have to be defined by my circumstances and what I went through, and I can completely change the trajectory of my life.
That's amazing. And thank you for sharing that. And I want to ask you a somewhat of a deeper question, right? Because just like you, some different experiences with my father. What was it like growing up? And it's like, you have friends that like maybe they're sleepovers and it's like, oh, wait, I don't want you to come to my house, right? Because I remember going through that, right? Like, I'll go to you, but I don't want you coming here. What was that like for you? Like growing up, right? Like all children do, you have friends. And I think for folks like Samantha and I, growing up a little early, because you become aware of surroundings and you become aware of, oh, wait, this isn't what everybody goes through. This is just happening here. What was that like for you? Like, how did that shape like friendships and the things that most kids got to do or wanted to do that maybe you didn't do, or you had to shelter that from other people too?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. And I feel like I had so much shame around my house and where I grew up. My parents both smoked, and I cannot stand cigarettes to this day. And my father and my mother they like to hoard things. So I would always be the one cleaning up the house and trying to make it look amazing if I had anyone over. But to be honest, I've never even had this conversation with anyone, but I would always go to my friend's house. I would always make some excuse. We would always go over there. I was very embarrassed to have anyone come over. And it's still hard for me going to my parents' house, seeing the way that they live, and it's really sad. But again, it gives me a lot of compassion. And I find myself too in my adulthood, because a lot of the generational traumas that you go through, there's trauma responses that you have to work through. And I realized that I'm bringing that into my adulthood. So, I mean, I love my place. It looks beautiful, but I still find myself going to other people's houses because that's how I grew up. And yeah, I would say I had a lot of shame around that, and it was always going over other people's places.
You took that shame, you took the neglect that you felt like you had, right? And you turned it into power. So how did you take that, or not even how did you take it? You didn't let that become who you are. You didn't let that define you. So for the viewers and listeners, right, what was the next step for Samantha? So talk about the things that you've done, like from education to the empowerment that you were so vastly involved in. Like, how did you go from, I'm taking this and turning it into a power, and here's what I'm going to do?
Yeah, I think one of my mentors, Ed Mylett, he talks about being the one in your family to break all of generational curses. And I know this goes into my because as well, but I wanted to be the complete opposite of how I grew up. I mean, I wanted to be the complete opposite of alcohol and drugs and that scarcity, that victim mindset, the disease. So I feed my body with the things that I need to feed my body with. I seek outside mentors who have what I want, and it's been hard. I think the hardest part for me was analyzing my thoughts and knowing that you create your own reality. So I think it's a hard perspective because society doesn't teach that your thoughts precede what happens in your external circumstances and not the other way around. A lot of people react to their environment and what they're seeing, not realizing that your thoughts create that. And so for me, it was really realizing and stopping all of those negative thought patterns and rewiring my brain to think in a more positive way, saying that just because I didn't have this as a child doesn't mean I can't have the abundance, the success, the wealth, the happiness as an adult. So it was a really huge mindset shift to analyze all my subconscious thought patterns and to rewire them to think in abundance and happiness and joy.
Yeah, I love it. And so you kind of teased us with your because. So if we were to say today, what is Samantha Lynn Peters' because?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about this, and it goes back to what I previously said, but I'm going to be, and I am the person that's breaking through all of these generational curses, because when I grow up and have a family of my own, I never want them to have to go through what I went through, the pain and the suffering and the abuse and the neglect and just the negativity. And so I am that person that's changing it for future generations. But I think deeper than that too, it's showing people what's possible. You don't have to be defined by your circumstances. You can rise above. And there's people that want to see you win. There's people that are going to show up for you. And I find a lot of times it's not even your direct family. It's strangers and people that you don't even know that really do want to help you. So now it's just sharing my story and empowering other people to uplift them and to know that they can do it as well.
Yeah, and you do a lot of work in communities and specifically empowering women in business, right? When did that become a passion of yours?
It became a passion when I actually started network marketing and I grew my team to be pretty large. And then I started doing individual one-on-one sessions with all of the girls on my team. And I really got to know their stories. I got to know their why or their because. And it really helped. And I grew up, I have my master's degree in educational leadership, and I used to be a teacher for over 10 years. So I think it's just that nurturing in me and wanting to help people get better. And so it really developed, I would say, in network marketing, and it made me have the confidence and the belief in myself that I can help other women and I don't have to be defined by the past. So that's where it really stemmed from when I started my business network marketing about 5 years ago.
Amazing. So, I've known you for a while. I just learned something new about you that we have in common too. So I have a master's in leadership. So my focus was organizational leadership, and then I got another focus of executive leadership. So leadership's my jam. So I'm going to ask you, where do you see leaders failing the most today?
I think it comes down to, I actually had this conversation earlier in our meeting, emotional intelligence and being able to regulate your emotional state. I find so many people let outside circumstances and validation and what people think about them and what people say about them define their character and who they are. But you have to realize that you have complete control over your emotional state, and you can say, am I going to let that define me? Am I going to let that upset me? Or am I going to rise above it and not have to take that into account and hold firm to your values and who you are? And I don't want anyone to be able to bring me down or make me feel upset, because I hold that power to resist that. So I really do feel like it comes. You don't want your highs to get too high and your lows to get too low. You want to have that even keel, because I actually watched a video about this. If you're a leader and people are looking up to you, your emotional state they're called mirror neurons. So they're feeling that energy too, and they start to cultivate that from within. So I think that is one of the most important things in leadership. And I think a lot of people are failing with that today. I do see that a lot.
So we agree, which is why we're besties, right? Like, without even having this conversation offline, and we have so many conversations, like, we're in so much alignment there, because to me, emotional intelligence for leaders, and I would even say society too, like, that's the biggest drawback that I see with most people. We don't have to have immediate response. We don't have to have immediate gratification on things. Like, sometimes we need to reflect before we respond. Sometimes we need to look at, how does this affect the greater scenario versus the right now scenario? And to me, that's where emotional intelligence definitely comes into play. So that's kind of cool, Samantha. We have that in common.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you.
Let's talk about some of the other things that you do, all these other business ventures, I'm going to say, that you have, right? Because Samantha tries to get me to eat healthy, and I see what she eats. I'm like, Samantha, I can't eat that. I can't.
No parasite cleanse for you, Mick?
It scares me. Not gonna lie, it scares me on so many different levels. I don't want to gross out the viewers and listeners. But so, when did that become a thing for you? Again, you talked about it earlier when you talked about you care about what goes into your body and the amount and all that. So talk to us about that journey.
Yeah, so growing up, when I remember I was in second grade, my mother was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And I saw her hooked up to all these IVs, and it became really hard for her to walk. She ended up going on Social Security disability. She no longer works to this day, and she had cancer, congestive heart failure. My father has a bunch of other disabilities as well. So I saw that growing up, and I firmly believe that your environment does shape your thoughts, and your thoughts, when you're thinking negatively, that is putting cortisol in your body, and it's running through you, and it's toxic, it's acidic. So I had to really do a lot of work in wellness and know that what you put in your body, you become. And so if you're constantly eating sugar or carbs or things that are really unhealthy and processed, you're going to feel horrible. I don't know about you, but I eat something and I realize, okay, is this giving me energy, or is this making me feel sluggish? And do I have brain fog from it? So if you want optimal performance, you need to be eating things that are very healthy for you. And I think just growing up and seeing the disease in my family and my grandmother passing away from Alzheimer's, I'm doing everything in my power to figure out ways to anti-age, figure out ways to just optimize my health and wellness. And so it's been a big part of my journey.
Wow, that's awesome. So you do that, you do a lot in beauty as well too. Like, where did this thing for Samantha being, I'm not going to say any and everything, because you don't do any and everything, but I almost feel like you have your hand, like you have a lot of moving parts. You have a lot of things that are always going on. When did that become a part of you?
I think it's always been a part of me. I've always been so fascinated about life and people and different things. And so when I find a topic I'm fascinated about, I do so much research, and I'm constantly reading, I'm constantly listening to podcasts and getting mentored. So I don't know, I think life is so exciting, and when I find something that interests me, I like to dive in more to it. So I have a lot of passions, I would say.
I love it. Another thing I want to unplug is you and I both have this passion on the power of mentors and mentorship. And I think a lot of time people either they don't know how to seek advice, guidance, help, or their ego gets in the way, right? So how important has mentorship been for you in shaping who you are?
It's been everything. I mean, I think the most valuable asset is yourself and investing in you. I know a lot of people take their money and invest it in cars and outside circumstances and things, but ultimately you bring yourself everywhere you go. So I'm constantly seeking mentors to help me what I went through, and to understand that like I mentioned before, it doesn't have to define me. And the knowledge that they know, and for them to get where they are, it's incredible. And so I seek mentors all the time. I know that you're also mentoring us too. And I mentioned this previously, but you need to find someone who's been where you are and who has what you want. And I think it's really important because mentors need to know the struggles that you've gone through and really understand it on a deep level. And I find a lot of times people can't go as deep with anyone else as they've been with themselves. So I think a lot of mentors that I look up to, that I seek, have done the inner work, they've came through so many challenges and struggles and adversities. And that's what I really look for in a mentor when I'm seeking them out.
Totally agree, like 100% agree. And for me too, it's all about rounding myself out, right? And that's why I believe in having multiple mentors and multiple coaches, because everybody's not great at everything, but a lot of people have done that one thing really well, that one skill really well, or a couple skills really well. And so for me, that's what I seek. So if it's like, if this part of my life or this part of my journey, I can't figure out, or I haven't figured out, or I know I want help with, I go find either a coach or a mentor that has that thing, right? And because if there's anything, and I talk to Les Brown every day, if there's anything that he told me that like truly opened my eyes, it's this. It's not about experience, it's about wisdom. Because you can experience losing, you can experience going through a rut. It's wisdom that is like, hey, you don't want to do this, or you might want to do it this way, or go over here, right? And people talk about the journey of climbing steps, and Les was like, yeah, that's great. You should know how to climb steps, but if there's an elevator, take the elevator, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the difference. Like And we're not talking about not knowing how to take the steps. I think you have to know how to take the steps as a part of your journey, but you don't need to prove every day that you can take steps, right? Like sometimes when there's an elevator, take the elevator because you know where you're going. And to me, that's what mentorship is about. It's about knowing the difference between I need to take steps so I'm learning versus, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I just want to get there faster, or I want to get there without having to make these mistakes. And to me, that's what mentorship's about.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And Tony Robbins says this a lot too. He said, great mentors compress decades of learning into days for you. So like you mentioned, if you want to learn a specific skill set, go to that expert in that. And that's going to expedite your process and what you're doing so much faster. And it's either you're taking the time to learn it or you're paying money to learn that skill a lot faster, which is going to help give you momentum in whatever you're doing. So I couldn't agree more with what you said.
Very cool. Very cool. Again, you do a lot of things. You do a lot of things really, really well. So I applaud you for that. And, you know, again, the commonalities that we have, you also have a podcast, right? And so one of my best friends, Daniel Song, says, Mick, everybody should have a podcast. I don't agree with that. I think everybody should be a part of a podcast, right? I think communication skills and the ability to tell your story definitely makes sense. What made you and Alexa, what made you guys start your podcast? Like, what was day one? Like, I want to start a podcast because, what was that?
So we talked a lot about different mentors. I wanted to provide my audience with the people, the guests, the tools, the skills that helped them become successful. And I wanted to provide that knowledge to our audience base. And so I think a lot of it is giving back what I've learned and the connections I make and the relationships that I've cultivated. And I know some really amazing people, so it's great to be able to interview them and then have them share their wisdom. And my hope is that my audience can listen to the podcast and take an actionable step towards making their life become better. And then I also think it has to do with, I was always terrified of public speaking growing up. And I know that in order to overcome anything, you have to put yourself through it. So this was also something that wasn't easy for me. And the more that you practice, the more that you interview people or interviewed, it's going to build up that muscle and that confidence. So I would definitely say those are the two main reasons why we started our podcast.
And what's been the most amazing thing since you've been in the podcast journey? Like if you were to go back and say, wow, without the podcast, this probably wouldn't have happened, what would that be?
So many things. I've been invited to, we were just talking before we recorded the podcast, I was invited to Trent Shelton's birthday because I had him as a guest on my podcast. I was invited to Secret Knock where I got to meet so many incredible people. And so you never know what opportunities can come from opening up, putting yourself out there and starting something. And I know that if I've never started this, it would have been constantly on my mind. And I don't want to go through life thinking, what if? What if I started that? What would happen? So it's just been amazing, the people that I'm able to meet in the relationships, I think is the biggest piece that I was able to cultivate. And I mean, everyone we brought on is just so smart in their different ways. And it's just fascinating to be able to connect with everyone. So
Love it. I love it. And I know the power of the podcast and all the things that can come along with it. And now you're working on an ebook, right? So tell us a little bit about this ebook.
Yeah, so we published it a few weeks ago. It's my second ebook. It's called Creating Happiness from Within. So Alexa and I published it together, and I think a lot of it was realizing that people seek happiness outside of themselves. And I think that's a lot of times what society teaches us. You know, that promotion, that bonus, that car, the watches, all of these things that are fleeting in the moment, but don't actually give you self-fulfillment, because then you're always looking for something else. And so I find a lot of times our guests are truly happy within. And so it's taking the knowledge that they taught us and sharing it. And so it was a great journey writing that with her.
So let's take that a little bit further for the listener, the viewer that's like, Samantha, that sounds awesome. But how do I find happiness within? Like, what are some tips and tricks that you can give that person right now that's like, sounds great, but I'm at a place right now where I can't even get to where I can see the happiness?
I love that question. So I think the biggest thing for me was picking up a meditation routine, because a lot of times I feel like people are so focused on the past or the present, and meditation puts you in the present moment, and it makes you feel grateful for what you have. And so I combine that meditation with my gratitude practice, because how can you expect God and the universe to give you more when you're not even thankful for what you do have? And so that has been pivotal in my life. I actually created and published a journal. It's called the Dream Bigger Journal. And so every single day I'm writing down at least 3 things I'm grateful for. And it starts your day on such a positive note. And when you're in gratitude, your vibrational frequency is raised tremendously, and you start attracting more positive things in your life. So I would definitely say that. And then another thing that has helped me is keeping the promises I make to myself. If I say I'm going to wake up and go to the gym at 6 a.m., I am showing up for myself, because it's a reflection outside of you too. If you have that self-trust from within, other people are going to start trusting you. And that's a really good feeling, because you're creating that from within and not seeking anything externally.
I love it. You're amazing, Samantha.
Thank
You're
you.
amazing. So you ready to go rapid fire with Samantha Lynn Peters?
Oh gosh. I'm ready.
All right. So I'm not going to say it's your crazy nutrition regimen, but walk us through a breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner, snack, whatever. Walk us through a day of Samantha Lynn Peters in the eating journey.
So I do a lot of intermittent fasting. So I typically will skip breakfast and I juice right away. So I always juice celery juice in the morning, about 16 ounces. That flushes out your liver. I know a lot of people don't like
Already
celery.
lost me. I'm already done. I can't even start, but go ahead.
But it gives you so much mental clarity. And so I eat a lot of salads. I like to meal prep quite a bit too. So I don't do anything farm raised. It's always wild caught salmon, vegetables, anything you could think of, sauteed vegetables, organic chicken. I won't eat anything that's not organic. So vegetables, fruits, anything like that. That's what I'm eating for lunch and dinner.
You lost me at the celery. I'm sorry. The celery juicing. I couldn't hear anything after you said that.
I'm also, I like to do a lot of heavy metal detox as well. It just gives me so much more mental clarity. And so it has a lot of wild blueberries, an organic banana, spirulina powder, Atlantic dulce, which is actually a seaweed from the ocean, and then an orange as well in there. And so I find that I feel incredible after I do take that smoothie. So that would be my regimen.
All right. So I've always wanted to ask this question, and you're the person that can answer it now. How much do you spend per month in all of that?
I would say for the grocery store, I like things fresh. So I like to actually go to the grocery store and pick out what my produce looks like, my vegetables, my fruits. So I probably spend about $100 a week on myself for groceries.
Oh, that's not bad.
It's not bad at all.
No, that's not bad. I'll give it a try, but I'm not doing the celery juicing. that I can promise.
What if you mix it with something? It might taste a little better.
No, celery's still in it. Celery's still in it. All right. So next question. Do you ever have like a cheat moment?
Absolutely.
So what's your go-to cheat meal or cheat dish or a cheat snack?
I love anything with potatoes. So I do like truffle French fries, and I'm a huge chocolate lover. So anything with chocolate, guaranteed, if it's in front of me, I'm eating it.
All right. So is Samantha into sports?
Yes, I used to be a gymnast growing up. So
I knew that.
yeah.
So your favorite sport, is it still gymnastics?
I love gymnastics, yes. And I don't practice gymnastics, but I love doing hot vinyasa yoga because it allows for deep stretching, very similar poses to gymnastics as well. And it just cleanses my body too, doing the hot power yoga.
See, I'm learning a lot about you that I didn't already know. Look at that. Look at that. So you're in the Connecticut area.
Yes.
Is Samantha more rural town or New York City?
Rural town. Absolutely. I love visiting the city and I like the hustle and bustle for maybe 1 or 2 days, but I love serene and feeling peaceful and driving through the mountains and just seeing forest and greenery all around.
All right, last two questions. Who's been your favorite podcast guest?
Ooh, this is a hard one. We've had a lot of amazing ones. Obviously, you were incredible. I can't wait for your episode to launch.
Okay.
Hasn't launched yet, but I would say Garen Jones. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but his story is absolutely incredible. He was able to change his life around, and he's such an incredible husband and father, and I love the impact that he's making on the world. I would say he would probably be my favorite interview.
All right. I like it. And then if you could go listen to two speakers at any conference in the world, who would those two speakers be?
Ed Mylett. I love him. I was actually on his TV show, but every single time I hear him speak, he just resonates with me on such a deep level, and I always end up tearing up, and I always learn a tremendous amount from him. So I would definitely say him. And I love Jamie Kern Lima. I mean, her story of resilience and what she went through is just incredible. So I would say those would be my two top, but then I would also include Joe Dispenza as well. He's just incredible, the way he thinks and his outlook and perspective on life.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So again, honored to have you on today. Like, what else does Samantha have going on? What did we not say that you have going on that you have going on? What do you want to leave the listeners and viewers with?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we just launched our ebook. We just launched our website. So we started off the Light Up Your Life podcast as just doing that, but we're expanding it into a brand. And we're also starting weekly accountability meetings. So we're doing a women's empowerment group. So we're kicking that off really soon, which we're happy about. I feel like that's definitely the next step, and we want to make a huge difference in the world. So that's definitely going to be an avenue for us to be able to do so.
Very good. Very good. So last thing, where can people follow and find you? And I'll make sure we have links to the ebook, to the website, and everything in the show notes. But where do you want people to find and follow Samantha?
You can find me on Instagram. It's my full name. It's Samantha Lynn Peters. And then our website is lightupyourlife.org.
You are the greatest. My bestie, Samantha Lynn Peters. Samantha, thank you so much for taking time with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
You got it. And for all the listeners and viewers, remember, your because is your superpower. Go unleash it.
Thank you for tuning in to Mick Unplugged. Keep pushing your limits, embracing your purpose, and chasing greatness. Until next time, stay unstoppable.